It's day 4 of COP27, and Sarah Larniuk is watching things for us. She's with us once again from London. And Sarah, as far as promises, climate commitments, what are we hearing so far?
Essentially, what we've heard, though admittedly not in so many words, is that the target of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees is dead. There was a presentation this morning from a group called Climate Action Tracker, and this organization is really a critical climate resource because it tracks not only reported emissions from 40 countries, but also what each country has promised here on the international stage, and then what they do when they go home. And these 40 countries that they track represent 80% of global emissions. And what their analysis shows is that currently we only have a 50-50 shot at even limiting global warming to 1.8 degrees Celsius, but that we're more likely on track to hit almost 3 degrees of warming still. Governments promised last year, when they were confronted with the fact that their targets were still insufficient, to go home and, come back this year with more to show, but that hasn't happened. And if we want to look at what Climate Action Tracker says specifically about Canada, it looks at the country's promises and rates them as nearly sufficient. But then when it comes to the actual actions taken by the Canadian government to lower emissions, it's rated as highly insufficient. And what that actually means is that if all countries were failing to the same extent that Canada is to lower emissions, we'd actually be on track to warm by 4 degrees Celsius. Climate Action Tracker has also started rating climate finance commitments, and we've been hearing a lot about that this week at the conference, and their report rates Canada as highly insufficient on that front as well.
Where are the gaps coming from? What explains them?
A number of reports have come out in the days leading up to this summit, and though there are so many things that people could point to, most of these reports are looking at natural gas and government's continued investment in developing this specific fossil fuel resource. The International Energy Agency says that currently 20% of global emissions come from burning natural gas, and its analysis shows that in order to stay on track to be net zero by 2050, natural gas use has to decline by 30% this decade, and that is not what we're seeing. Bill Hare at the Climate Action Tracker follows government policy on natural gas, and this is what he had to say today.
In other words, limiting warming to 1.5 degrees means that total gas use has to go down, and that includes liquefied natural gas. But the problem is that the pipeline of under construction, approved and proposed LNG, liquefied natural gas facilities is massive. This should be declining by 2030, but is in fact set to increase by well over 200% above recent levels by then.
Another report from a German NGO found that under current expansion plans, global export of liquefied natural gas will more than double. A representative from that group called the revelations frightening.
Sarah, thank you very much. Sarah Larniuk in London for us today.